What will happen in episode 3 of the final season of Game of Thrones? What can we learn from the trailer? Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to Deep Geek. If you want regular insight and intelligent debate about Game of Thrones and more, then click on the subscribe button in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. We have a trailer for episode 3 of season 8 of Game of Thrones. This and the pre-season trailers give us a lot of footage about what will happen. There are no spoilers here, but we have some quite strong hints about how the battle will pan out. Like episode 2, it looks as though most, if not all, of this episode is going to be set at Winterfell. Perhaps we'll have an update from Cersei in King's Landing or Yara in the Iron Islands, but probably not. This has been billed as the longest and biggest battle scene in TV history, longer even than the epic siege of Helm's Deep in The Lord of the Rings. It took nearly 2 months to film, and I would imagine lots of time for CGI and post-production. This was a big deal for the production team, and it's this, rather than any final confrontation in King's Landing, that the showrunners have been focusing their pre-publicity on. So expect something spectacular, and something taking place in a lot closer to real time than most episodes. It looks from the lighting as if most of the fighting takes place in a short period of time during that one night. It's hard to say for sure because the Army of the Dead brings with it darkness and snow and cloud cover, but it doesn't look as though the fighting extends into the following day, which fits in with how the Army of the Dead seem to operate. They may move slowly between places, but their tactics in battle, at Bloodraven's Cave, Hardhome and so on, seem to consist largely of just attempting to swarm their enemy. The Whites charge straight into battle with the White Walkers directing things and getting involved themselves when needed. So this battle is about one side charging into attack and the other defending for their lives. The armies may look all neatly lined up here, and there was much talk of battle plans and the like, but the tactics here are actually quite basic. The Army of the Dead will throw themselves at Winterfell, and the defenders will just try to hold them back. They have some tricks up their sleeves. I expect those trebuchets to be firing fiery boulders and the like. There is clearly the idea of retreating behind a ditch and then setting it alight. I can imagine an unsullied shield wall, with all the shields tipped with dragonglass. The Dothraki will surely have to charge into the fray wielding dragonglass weapons, and so on. But the momentum of this ground war is clear. The Army of the Dead will just keep coming. Every now and then they will replenish their forces with their fallen foes, and keep going. Talking of those who might die and be brought back in the Knight's Army, it's a fun game to try and guess who that might actually be. The only real clue we have is whose storylines appear to have run their course, and if they are likely to be on the front line, then it's not looking good. Grey Worm, making plans with Missandei for after all this is done, seems very likely to be setting himself up for tragedy. Ser Jorah gained acceptance from his family and was presented with a Valyrian steel sword to replace the one he gave up in shame, so his arcs seem to have reached a satisfying conclusion too. Ed was always about being a member of the Night's Watch and defending the realms of men, so it makes sense for this to be his last stand. Beric and Tormund have been riding their luck for a while, and, for real heartbreak, how about Jaime? His story arcs seemed to reach suspiciously well-rounded endings last episode, reuniting with and knighting Brienne, getting sort of forgiveness from Bran for pushing him out of that window all that time ago, reminiscing with Tyrion about how they've changed and grown and are now better people, and so on. Perhaps he could have a heroic death, one that is recognised and commemorated afterwards. And for added tragedy, think for a moment what you would do if someone you cared about was dying in that battle with the Army of the Dead. Would you leave them to be raised as a White, or would you stab them with a handy piece of dragonglass or a Valyrian steel sword to save them from that fate? Might we see someone like Brienne having to actually mercy kill someone like Jaime? No, let's not think about that too much. But there will be a lot of terrible decisions like that in this battle, for it's not a normal battle. And it's not a normal battle because the army of the dead are not a normal army. The living appear to have belatedly realised this, and they have a plan as set out in episode 2. They have decided that the way to destroy the army of the dead is to destroy the Night King. Kill him and the rest just collapse. Bran says that the Night King is after him, so he is the bait, sitting out in the Godswood with just Theon and the Ironborn to protect him. Jon and Dany will hide out somewhere. We see them in the trailer on what looks like a hill, looking out over the massed armies. I wonder whether they will continue their rather awkward conversation about family relations and Targaryen succession laws. And then, when the Night King appears, they will swoop and try to kill him. At least, that's the plan. There are, of course, lots of obvious problems with this plan. First, they don't actually know how to kill the Night King. They will almost certainly try Dragonfire, but as Bran says, no one knows if that works because no one has tried it before. The times we've seen him walk through flames before, it wasn't dragon flames per se, incidentally. Even if Dragonfire may have initially caused those flames, they will have been burning at a much lower temperature. In any event, Theon and his flaming arrows probably won't have much of an effect. Second, we have to ask what Bran is up to. He clearly has a plan. He has been subtly directing events in Winterfell so far this season, moving things along when Jon and Dany first arrived, getting Sam to tell Jon about his parentage, waiting for Jaime to arrive, and so on. He was the one who wanted to be situated in the Godswood. It's open, as he says, but that would only make it easier for the Night King to swoop down and burn him with Dragonfire, if that's what he wants to do. It seems that Bran, the three-eyed raven, must have an idea of how he might prevail, and it's something to do with the weirwood tree. Something that he thinks the rest might not agree to, or else why not tell them? I do wonder whether Tyrion might figure it out. They underplayed it last episode, but he was seemingly the first person to actually sit down and get Bran to tell them his tale. Perhaps Tyrion, with Sam and Varys and Gilly in the crypts, will be able to tie all these loose ends together. Why the spiral symbol is so important, what it tells us about the creation of the Night King, and how he might be uncreated. In the absence of any hard evidence, my best guess is that it will involve the death of Bran, the weirwoods, everything, symbolically shown by that fiery symbol in episode 1. I also think the line from the pre-season trailer of Bran saying, "Everything you did brought you where you are now, where you belong, home," is probably him talking to Theon in the Godswood. We won't go straight into the fighting this episode. There will be a period before that when characters can have a few more honest conversations with one another. The other thing that could go wrong, of course, is that the Night King won't do as all the characters seem to expect him to. I know some have suggested that he might not show up at all and instead fly down to King's Landing, but that's not really his style. He never avoids conflict. He was there at the front at Bloodraven's Cave, Hardhome, and the battle north of the Wall last season. In that, he even left his position to walk towards the dragons. So I think he'll be there, but I think he'll also be waiting. He won't want to face two dragons in open combat, so I think he'll sit tight and wait for the right moment to strike. So, the one thing we can say for certain is that things are not going to go according to plan, and I think we can make a few educated guesses as to how. Firstly, the army of the dead will breach Winterfell's defences. There are lots of shots of fighting on the battlements, which would only happen if the Whites get past the forces arrayed outside the walls. Then we see Jon and Daenerys face to face, seemingly arguing. She says that the dead are already here, implying that they need to do something to save lives. Does she get tired of waiting and head off to help in the battle? I can imagine them there watching the battle, seeing their loved ones being slaughtered below them, and starting to get frustrated, not wanting to stand by and do nothing. They both have a tendency to be rather impetuous on these occasions. Remember Jon in the Battle of the Bastards, or Daenerys dropping everything to head north on Drogon last season? If they split up and abandon their position, that would certainly be the kind of thing that would prompt the Night King into action, because although they might have been waiting for him, he was probably also waiting for them. I said a moment ago that he wouldn't want to face 2 dragons in open combat, but one on its own, particularly one ridden by an inexperienced rider, that's an entirely different thing. Which brings me to a hint of something quite significant happening here with the dragons. Because something that is noticeable about the trailer is that we don't see Jon on Rhaegal. He clearly starts by flying over to that hill, but then we get lots of shots of him on the ground, fighting, rallying the troops and so on. Where's Rhaegal? It makes sense for the Night King on Viserion to attack Jon on Rhaegal. And there is a lot of foreshadowing in Fire and Blood, the recent history by George R.R. Martin, of dragons fighting each other and crashing to the ground, their riders sometimes surviving, sometimes not. Might that be what happens here? Could Viserion and Rhaegal grapple each other and kill each other, leaving Drogon the only surviving dragon? It certainly makes sense of Jon being on the ground so much in this battle when he wasn't planning to be. And also the shots we have of what looks like inside Winterfell during the battle. Arya hiding and running, Beric and Sandor peering around corners. Because that doesn't look like a huge battle that has spilled over from the outside. It looks more like searching and finding and running from something or someone inside Winterfell. Could the Night King also survive the fall and be on the hunt inside Winterfell? Perhaps. We have also been promised a moment between the Night King and Jon, similar to what happened at Hardhome, with him raising the dead, but even more dramatic. To me, this sounds like the Night King raising people that Jon knows, either those recently fallen in battle or those in the crypts. Either way, I can't see the showrunners missing the opportunity for us to see some of the characters we love as whites. It will be a tough episode. This, incidentally, is the last episode on which we have much, if any, footage from the pre-season trailers. From here on in, we know a whole lot less about what will happen. I can't wait. Please join me for live streams on Thursdays and Sundays on this channel all through the season, where I'll be discussing the season with special guests and making predictions about future episodes. If you'd like to see more of my Game of Thrones Season 8 videos, please click on this link on the left of the screen. Or if you'd like to support the channel or get some exclusive content or priority access on my live streams, please click on the link to my Patreon page on the right of the screen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.